Okay, so we are almost done. There's just a few more steps left to go. This bag is going to be the bag in which I'm going to attach the zipper to the top of the bag, so I'm going to show you how to do that. I've already attached the lining gusset to this bag. I did it exactly the same way we did it with the other bag and for our exterior panels. I've also left the opening in the bottom for turning the bag right sides out. So let's go ahead and get started on attaching that zipper to the top of this bag. So of course you need the completed lining. You also need your zipper. What you will do is find the center of this zipper and mark it. You're going to use these center marks to line everything up. So it's very important to have these center marks. Okay, so now that that is marked, I'm going to take my zipper and unzip it a little bit. What you want to do is place your zipper inside your lining so that it is lining side of the zipper against the lining side of the main panel, and you're going to line up your center marks. Once you line up that center mark, pin it in place, and then continue pinning all the way across from the middle over to the right and the middle over to the left. There we go. That is how it will look when it is pinned. Somebody wants to say hi. She wants to be part of the video. If you're finding that your zipper is kind of getting close and it's going over the side gusset, shift it over a little bit. You don't want it to be going up the side gusset. You just want it right against the lining main panel. Just like that. I'm going to unzip this side of the panel and take the zipper right off now that I have that attached. I like to leave it attached up to this point just to make sure I'm attaching it properly so that I'm going lining side to the lining side of the main panel. The other thing you want to make sure is that you don't pin or sew over this when you're sewing, so the zipper tail. You don't want to sew over it. So keep it tucked down inside, out of the way when you are sewing so that you don't accidentally catch it. You can take this other piece of the zipper panel and just put it off to the side for now. So we're going to go ahead and sew this with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance to attach it to the top of the bag. As I mentioned with the other zippers, I like to sew when I'm basting this to the bag with a 1/4 inch seam allowance because I know I'm going to go back after and sew the exterior to this part of the bag with a full seam allowance, and that way there, if I don't sew with an accurate 3/8 of an inch seam allowance in the end, you won't see my stitches from attaching the zipper panel. So you're just sewing this right to your main panel. You're not sewing on your side at all, on your gusset, just to the main panel. There it is attached. I'm going to clip my threads. So once that side is attached, you want to repeat this same process for attaching this side so we can attach the remaining zipper to the other side of your lining main panel. So again, line up your center marks and then pin it all the way across. Then you will go and baste it to your lining main panel with your seam allowance, and then you are complete, and that step is done. Again, don't forget to tuck in your zipper tails. You don't want to sew over those accidentally. And there you have it. Your lining zipper panel is attached. So we did the same thing. Put the lining side of the zipper together with the lining side of the lining main panel, pinned it in place, lining up your center marks, and then sewed all the way across. Okay, so now that we have sewn our zipper panel to our lining main panels, we're going to go ahead and finish the bag. Now is the moment of truth when we get everything put together. This is the exciting part. So you're going to take your exterior and turn it right sides out. even worry about pushing out my corners too much just yet, because we will do that a little bit later. So you want to take your exterior and you want to place it inside the lining of your bag. If you have done a solid back and you have one with the zippers on one side, you want to decide which pocket inside your lining will be on the front of your bag and which pocket will be on the back of the bag. So go ahead and decide that now. So when you put this in the bag and you turn it right side out, it is in the position you want it to be in. Because I have the pockets on both sides, it doesn't really matter for me. You want to make sure your zipper tails are tucked down, as well as the handles. If you did the no hardware handle hack, you want to make sure they're tucked down. Oh, somebody has tried to take away some of my clips. So what you do first is, after you have your handles and everything tucked in, is line up the side seams, and I like to press them open when I'm lining them up, and then place a clip on those side seams. So the side seam is the gusset seam where it meets your main lining panel. So I like to line those up, all of those first, so do all 4 seams. So all 4 seams are lined up. Now I'm going to go ahead and line up the 2 middles of the lining main panels. Again, make sure your handles are tucked down into the bag and your zipper tail so that it is not sticking up and you don't accidentally sew over them. Once you have the centers of the main panels lined up, go ahead and pin everywhere else. Okay, so mine's all pinned. I probably went a little clip crazy, but I like to make sure nothing shifts. So again, I lined up the raw edges, the top raw edge of my exterior and my lining. I lined up the seams on the side gussets and the center seams on my lining main panel and exterior main panel. Then I clipped the rest of the way around. What you're going to do now is sew this with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. When you get to where your handles are, again, if you did the hack with the handles with no hardware, you want to make sure they're not up in your way. It's okay if you sew over part of this handle that's on the back. That's okay to sew over, but you want to make sure that that handle is down. So you can always reach in and give your handles a pull and make sure they're down so that they don't accidentally get sewn over. And you also want to just do another check. It's best to be safe and make sure that your zipper tails are down so that they also don't get sewn. So I'm going to go ahead and start sewing mine with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you have an extension table, because you have a machine that doesn't have a free arm, this may be helpful to use right now to help hold the bag up while you're sewing it. So I'm going to install mine. And now I'm going to sew this with the full seam allowance of 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so the lining is now sewn to my exterior. If you chose to stitch over these handles, that's okay. I wanted to show you another option for helping reduce bulk. You can hold them down as you're sewing, and then when it comes time to turn the bag out, before you do, you can trim these down. That'll help make sure that they're not in this seam allowance when you do your top stitching. So trim them down. If you sewed yours on, you may not be able to trim very much off them. I used rivets, so I'm able to cut quite a bit off. This will help reduce bulk if your machine has a hard time handling bulk. Mine would have been okay, but I just want to show you how to do that. So I used a rivet. I was able to cut quite a bit. If you sewed an X through your box, through your handle because you don't have rivets, you can cut it down as much as you can. That'll still help reduce the bulk. Another thing is you can trim back your foam and your extra material here from your lining at the top of your TZP if you want, so that it just reduces the bulk when you go to top stitch. I'm going to go and sew a second row of stitching before we move on, so that'll just help hold everything in place. All right, so I've sewn that second row stitching. That's just for extra security. You can go ahead and trim your seam allowance. So I'm going to trim down my foam. I'm using duckbill scissors. These are handy because they cut with the bill against the fabric I'm not cutting. So for example, here I'm putting it against my trim and zipper panel because I'm not cutting that. I'm just strictly cutting the material that is attached to the foam, so the duckbill acts as a guard, and then I can just trim away with no worry of cutting any fabric that I don't want to cut. Okay, you can go ahead and trim down the whole seam allowance if you prefer. So you can trim everything down. I just like to trim just my foam down when necessary, when I need to trim the foam, trim the bulk out of the seam allowance. I like to keep the other there just to have some extra grab for when I'm top stitching. I find it helps the top of the bag lay a little bit nicer because it has this to help pull it down when I'm top stitching on it. It just has that extra area to grab onto. Hope that makes sense. Now we need to turn the bag right side out through the hole, or berth the bag. Be careful when you're doing this. Try not to pull the bag as much as possible. Try to push the bag. You don't want to pull because you don't want to pull on any stitches and break any stitches or cause any other holes or tear your fabric. So try to push the bag rather than pull it. I know we have to do a bit of pulling, but try to avoid it as much as possible. Now I'm going to push out my corners. So this is where you'll want to use your poking tool to push out those corners. Be very careful pushing them out. You don't want to poke a hole. If you do poke a hole, don't panic. Just go and stitch the hole closed. Okay, so I've pushed out my corners. So they look nice now. I'm going to now close the hole in my lining. This sits right under my laptop sleeve, or it might sit under your laptop sleeve. I chose not to have it under there. I chose to have it on the side of my slip pocket, but Kristen says that it's under the laptop sleeve. Wherever you put it, it's really your preference. You can go ahead and fold the fabrics, press them under so that they press together like this. So turn them and press them together. You can use your iron to press this seam, or just do what I do, and I just use a lot of Wonder Clips. You can either slip stitch this by hand, or you can use your machine, whatever you feel more comfortable with. It is in the bottom of the bag. Not many people really look in there, especially when you have, you know, all your items inside your bag. You don't really see it. If it's under the laptop sleeve, nobody will see it for sure because it'll be under there. So you'll go and pin these so that they are right sides together all the way across, folding it under so you're closing your opening. Again, you can press this with your iron if you prefer. You can also use double-sided wash-away tape to help hold your fabrics if you're more comfortable with that as well. If you don't have double-sided wash-away tape, you can use a glue stick. then take your iron and press the seam with your iron to dry the glue. So now that I have that all pinned, I'm going to go and sew that with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance just to close up my opening. Another tip, I try not to remove my clips until my presser foot touches them. This just ensures that nothing shifts while I'm sewing. Now we're going to push our lining into our bag. And you want to press and roll all your seams up so that you have a nice top edge to top stitch. You can press it with your iron. If you used vinyl, cork, or faux leather like I did for your trim and zipper panel, you won't be able to press on that side with your iron. You'll have to press from your lining side. Also be careful if you used any of those materials here for your laptop secure strap. You don't want to hit that. So I'm going to take this to my iron and I'm going to give it a really good press. Okay, so now that I've pressed my bag, I pressed from the lining side. Somebody wants to say hi. This is my cat Buddy. So I've pressed from the lining side just because I'm using vinyl and I don't want to burn my vinyl. Couple of options I wanted to note before we do our top stitching. If you've done the bag using the no hardware handle hack, Kristen does have us top stitch going right over the handles. If you're worried about your machine handling the bulk and skipping stitches, you can just simply flip these handles down out of the way and sew right across without sewing over your handles. A zipper foot will be helpful. You'll be able to get close without these handles being in the way of your regular sewing foot. Another option is to stitch with your zipper panel down. If you again are worried about the bulk, you can stitch with your zipper panel up out of the way, and that way there you're just simply stitching through your exterior and your lining and your handles are down as well. Or keep your panel up, flip your handles up, and then stitch through just the exterior, lining, and your handles. Or you can stitch through handles, exterior, lining, and your zipper panel. There's a couple of different options for you. I'm choosing to do the not stitching through my zipper panel, and I'm only going to stitch through my exterior and lining. I just like the way it looks a little bit better. That's just a personal preference. I also find that if I stitch through my recess zipper, I find that if it gets pulled over time, I'm worried that this will pop some stitches. Again, personal preference. So I'm going to put on my Teflon foot for sewing vinyl. Because I don't have a free arm on my machine, I'm going to turn my bag so it is lining sides out. It'll be easier for me to stitch with the exterior inside the bag. And again, I'm stitching with my handles out of the way and my zipper panel staying up like this on both sides. So you can see it's up out of the way. So I'm going to start stitching. You want to use a longer stitch length. Another thing to do is check your bobbin before you top stitch. You don't want to run out of bobbin partway through stitching your top stitching. Okay, so now I am ready to top stitch. I'm going to make sure my handles are out of the way and my zipper panel. I'm going to start at one of the side seams. If you feel more confident with clips all along the side seams, you can go ahead and do that just to hold your side seams in place. There is a bit of bulk in the seams where we attached the side gusset to your exterior panels. But this will help hold those side seams nice and flat until you get to them. Again, handles are down, zipper panel is up, and I'm starting right at the side seam. When you're top stitching, don't rush, take your time, go slow. You want this to be as nice as you possibly can get it. Okay, so top stitching is all done. Now we can turn our bag back right side out. Take your time doing this again. Okay, so that is what your bag will look like with it top stitched. We're now going to install our zipper onto our zipper tape. I have a video on my YouTube channel for how I install the zipper onto the zipper tape. So this is my zipper helper. When you're putting your zipper pull onto the tape, you want to make sure that you're lining up these ends and you're putting it on as evenly as possible. Almost like I need another person just to hold the bag. So I'm trying to put it into the zipper pull, the ends of the tape, as even as possible. If it doesn't go in evenly, keep trying, pull the pull off and try again until you get it nice and even. There we go. Mine worked out on the first try. That's probably one of the first times that's ever happened. Now we need to install our metal zipper end onto the end of our zipper tape. This is where you can decide if you want to have a shorter tail or a longer tail. I like having a longer tail because it means I can open the bag a little bit wider when it's unzipped, but you can go ahead and cut it a little bit smaller if you prefer to have it smaller. You're going to need some glue. I use Beacon 3-in-1 glue. So my metal zipper stop, or zipper end I mean, or zipper stop I guess, same thing. I fold my zippers, so one end behind the zipper teeth and the other end goes behind the zipper teeth. Then I use a clip to hold it all in place. I put a bit of glue inside my metal zipper end. This just helps hold it in case the screw accidentally falls out or comes loose. This just helps hold it onto the tape. Extra security. I'm sure you've discovered I'm all about extra security. So that is on. Now we're going to take our screwdriver and we're going to install the screw. Don't hold this in your hand and screw it in, because if your screwdriver slips, you can stab your hand. Hold the zipper end on the table and screw with it going in towards the table. And there you go. It's all installed. That's how it'll look. I'll come closer. That's how it'll look. Then your bag is all complete. Again, when you top stitched, you can choose to top stitch right across your handles to help hold them, give extra security. You can choose to top stitch with your zipper panels in, or as I did, don't top stitch over the zipper panels and leave them so that they are up out of the top stitch seam allowance. You can give this a good press. If you used vinyl, cork, or faux leather, you can use some Wonder Clips on your seams to help press this. Leave it on for a few hours or overnight. That'll help give your bag a boxy look. And that one is all done. Oh, before we say we're all done, sorry. You need to attach your crossbody strap. Almost forgot. So there it is, the handles and the crossbody strap with the zipper pockets and the inside all complete. You can unclip your key minder so that it just dangles now, and this is all done.